Episode 162. I believe achieving success in the outdoor biz is dependent upon embracing the outdoor lifestyle and learning from outdoor leaders that came before you. If you agree, then listen up for tips, advice, and hacks about growing or starting your career in the outdoor biz. My name is Rick Sayes. Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Are you in the adventure retail biz? Joan and Bill Keller offer tips and advice on surviving through the early days of online competition and more. But first, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast for your brand or passion project, I've created a free cheat sheet outlining 10 fundamental steps to create and launch your podcast. It has everything you need to know about planning, creating, and launching. Head over to ricksayes.com and download this free resource today. Bill and Joan Keller from Lake Travel Store talk about the beginnings of the travel business, surviving in the early days of Amazon, and much, much more in this wide-ranging conversation. Hey, Joan and Bill, welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, great to be catching up with you guys. I haven't talked to you guys in quite a while. I'm sorry that we've lost touch a bit.
Yeah, miss you.
Yeah, you guys too. I haven't been going to San Diego as much as I used to, but I'll be down in the next 30 days. We have a big reunion coming up, so I'll be down for that. So maybe we can
let's get together.
Yeah, let's do it. Yep, plan on it. So let's start out with your first exposure to travel. How'd you guys get bit by the travel bug?
I think for both of us, it was family road trips. In my case, my parents moved from farms in Minnesota to San Diego when I was 2 years old. My sister was 7. And for as long as I can remember, every summer we would drive back to visit the many, many cousins I have in Minnesota and visit all the aunts and uncles. And we would do it, my parents would call it driving straight through. No stopping. 2,000 miles.
Oh, my God.
You know, they would take turns traveling. My sister and I would sleep in the back seat. I do remember, I don't remember how old I was, but I remember going through the Rocky Mountains and looking up and seeing those peaks and just thinking it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen.
Cool.
So that was my original traveling. My first solo traveling kind of took me back to those Rocky Mountains. I got on a Greyhound bus and went to Colorado to visit Western State College in Gunnison.
No.
Because I was thinking of transferring from San Diego State, mainly because there was a ski area 30 minutes away.
Nice. Yeah, the ski area is a little farther than that in San Diego.
Yeah. And I did that and really spent a lot of time exploring the Rocky Mountains, did some hiking and camping and a lot of skiing. Loved
and you
skiing.
ended up graduating from there, correct?
Pardon me?
You ended up graduating in Colorado, right?
No, in fact, the downside of my love of skiing is that I did more skiing than studying. So, in fact, I didn't finish.
Oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then the big trip was after I dropped out of Western State, like many people my age at the time, I, put a backpack on and hiking boots and blue jeans and went to Paris.
Oh, okay.
Traveled around Europe. So I did that big Europe trip.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah. And how about you, Bill?
Well, like Joan, it was started with family trips. I think some of this you could relate to, Rick. My family used to go over to the Borrego Desert, camping. We go down to Baja, down to La Mission, and even further south to San Quintin, down beyond Ensenada. This is mid-50s, and it was hard to get down there. But we also did a lot of family camping, some longer trips to Yellowstone, Banff, Lake Louise, Vancouver Island. I still sort of see my mom standing over the Coleman stove cooking.
Nice.
So that's kind of where it started. Actually, when I was a teenager, I can't believe how much freedom I got in my family. When I was 15, I took the train to Mazatlan from Mexicali with my brother for Easter break. And then I was just 16, and the summer of 1967, I went up to the Monterey Pop Festival.
Jeez.
And I saw, among other things, the great Otis Redding and Jimi Hendrix's first performance in the United States.
Wow.
Went up to the Fillmore Auditorium after that. So I did a lot of travel within the States.
Yeah, you had a lot of freedom. That's impressive.
Yeah, it was pretty, I'm surprised. I'm not sure anybody should have that much freedom, but I made the most of it. And in fact, at age 18, as I was getting out of high school, I was playing in a rock band, saxophone. We were pretty good for the local group, did some recording in Hollywood. But the lead guitar player's family was from Denmark, and they said, why don't you go to school in Denmark when you get done with high school? Mm. So we did. Went over and spent 4 months in Julinde, in the middle of the peninsula, going to school. From there, went to England for about a year, and then on to Thailand for a little over a year.
Wow.
So I spent 3 years out of the country right out of high school and got hooked on travel and visiting other cultures.
I could see how that would do it, yeah. And what was your first travel-related jobs?
Well, let's see. In 1973, when we met in Madame Ermenkoff's French class at Rosemont College.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh. Was that it? Did you meet in Europe?
No.
Oh.
We were in a French class at Rosemont College here in San Diego.
Oh, okay, got you.
And Bill was already in the student travel business at that point. Mm. And in the course of the semester, he stood on his head to impress me. He introduced me to the music of Jesse Winchester, a singer-songwriter who became the soundtrack of our lives. Oh. And he asked me if I wanted to go to South America. And, like any normal person, I said, well, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
How long do you have to think about that? But he also asked me to help him stamp some brochures for charter flights he was selling. So I guess I'd have to say that was my first travel-related job, was helping my boyfriend stamp brochures.
Nice. Wait, got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's impressive.
So, yeah. I guess the first real job was when we started our business. We met in 73, were married in 76, and started the travel store 6 months later.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I had a day job. I was supporting us. And after work, I'd go do the bookkeeping for the business. So other than the brochure stamping gig, I guess that would be my first travel
Gotcha.
job.
What was your day job there when you started the travel?
I ran a training department at a bank.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I loved my job. It was a lot of fun.
So your organization skills go way back.
They do. I have an organized little brain.
I can relate to that. So do I. What was your first travel job, Bill? The student travel thing?
Actually, yes, it was. Actually, in the summer of 1972, I met a guy who had a student travel organization called Student Services West. It was based up on East Santa Clara in San Jose. And this is back in an era before airline deregulation. Mm-hmm. And in order to get a cheap flight to Europe, you had to be a member of some organization. And that qualified you to get a charter flight. In other words, there were airplanes that were under contract to fly on a certain day from a lot of LA to Paris, LA to Zurich, LA to Frankfurt choices. In fact, my first trip to Europe, I was on a charter flight. I had to join the German American Society here in San Diego to qualify to get a cheap flight.
Wow.
So what happened when I went to Grossmont College in 1970, late 72, early 73, when I met Joan, I started something I called the Get Off Your Seat and See the World Club.
Nice.
Which would allow students, faculty, and staff of Grossmont College to qualify for charter flights. And in fact, what I had a block of 40 seats, for example, on, let's say, June 28th, LA to Paris, and August 3rd from Paris back to LA. So that was the kind of the outline of how you got a cheap flight. Under airline regulation, the Pan Am, CWAs, British Airways of this world were very expensive, for a budget traveler. So this really kind of worked out for student travelers. A year later, I transferred to UCSD, where I began studying modern Chinese history and some Mandarin. Wow. But I followed up with the student travel business and opened this on-campus student travel office in the International Center on the Matthews campus of UCSD. That's what it's called at the time. And I had a little office, and I started promoting around campus, putting flyers up, and I had blocks of seats on flights to Europe. So it was very specialized. We had some Tahiti flights in the Christmas break period.
Cool.
But we also sold Eurail passes, student IDs, hostel cards, and that sort of thing. So for 3 years, as I was studying modern Chinese history, I was also on campus running the student travel office. In fact, one of the things that happened when I was there was a gentleman came in, a French guy, Henri Dacier.
You remember his name.
This guy was so colorful, and it was pivotal actually in the development of our business, because he came into my little office there where I'm selling flights to Europe. He was a rep for Michelin. He was actually one of the original guys who started selling Michelin tires in the U.S.
Wow.
He transferred to the Michelin Guides and Maps side of the business. He was actually out of the Bay Area at this time. But he came down and he said, hey, why don't you sell some, Michelin green guides and Michelin maps? And I said, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just beyond travel services, the whole idea of selling a few travel products came from Henri Dacier of Michelin Guides and Maps.
We owe it all to him.
So that was how I got into the travel business.
And so then, what was the catalyst for opening the La Travel store after you got married? Obviously, Bill, you were doing a little bit of that, but how did you guys decide to launch the store? Well,
it does follow right from that. In fact, as I was finishing up UCSD in December of 1976, actually I ended up getting hepatitis and didn't finish my final 3 classes there.
Oh, bummer.
So we're both dropouts. It comes down to.
I got kicked out, but went back. So.
That's a story.
It is.
So in my case, I was a little ahead of the curve on my interest in China. 1976 was still the Cultural Revolution. China didn't really begin to open up until 1978 under Deng Xiaoping.
Right.
So here I am getting out of school, and there's really no opportunity to do anything with China right in that time frame. A couple of years later, I would have been catching that wave. But as it turned out, there was something happening in the travel industry in that time, and that was airline deregulation that really grew under the Jimmy Carter regime. People don't remember that very well.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened just as I was finishing was that these charter flights, where you had to be a member of the organization to qualify, were now liberated to sell to the general public.
Oh, okay.
And I saw a little opportunity there that, all of a sudden these cheap flights were going to become available to everybody.
Right.
But travel agencies who were selling cruises and tours and commercial accounts with corporate accounts, they didn't have any idea what this market was like. But I did. I've been working it for 4 years.
Sure, yeah.
So we decided to create a little business, which we ended up calling, The Travel Store was the first name.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it started as a partnership. There had been an office on site on the campus of San Diego State run by Bernard and Louise Strife, a couple, and we started planning our own independent businesses away from the student travel company as a partnership. In the end, they had all the money and we didn't, so the whole partnership fell apart.
Funny how that happens, right? A lot of ideas when we were young. Yeah, that's
and in
interesting.
fact, so we decided to do it ourselves, and this was kind of the story of our business. We kind of saw a little wave over there, and I've been a surfer in my high school days, so I kind of looked around and
recognize
saw
the
this
trend.
coming,
Yeah.
And go and paddled over and caught the wave. And what the opportunity we saw was selling these flights to particularly student travelers. But I thought we identified our market initially as low budget, independent travelers.
Okay.
And that was heavily students. And your average student, which was our customer in those early days, would have very little money, but they'd have like a couple of months off in the summer, or they'd be finishing school and they'd be doing a gap year. So it was somebody who was trying to travel for an extended time on a low budget.
Right, a lot of folks are doing that.
Yeah, well, we rented space at Pacific Beach, a little space, and the goal in the first year was to sell 300 charter flights to Europe.
Yeah.
And we sold precisely 310.
Wow. Okay, good.
Which is kind of how business kept going. We always, we were barely.
He always just beat the number, huh?
We just made it. Just hung on. So that set the tone. So we started with the flights, rail passes, student IDs. We brought in some travel books and maps, a few travel bags, and some travel accessories like passport wallets, money belts, and some voltage converters.
And you guys sold adult luggage, right?
Right.
Yep. So
yeah. In fact, our big insight actually was we saw our customers were using outdoor gear for urban travel.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And our big innovation was bringing together in one location all of the things Bill's mentioned to you, along with backpacks and
some of the first
all the
Cordura
things,
luggage and all that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But the very first travel pack, in our recollection, we know that there's some different ideas, but it was Tom and Norma Limp, and it was the ultimate travel pack.
Oh, okay.
It was a sweet little bag, and we sold a lot of them.
Well, the reason I know that is because I graduated high school in 1978, and I don't know what I was doing at Pacific Beach, but me and a bunch of guys were at Pacific Beach. We walked into your store, and I bought my first, adult set of luggage from your shop. Yep.
Oh, really?
It was a red backpack kind of thing and a black duffel bag kind of thing. I'll never forget it. Yep.
Well, and their big innovation was to have the back straps zip away into a compartment.
Yep.
Which I don't think anybody had done that before.
Yeah, that's kind of why I bought it, because I'd been carrying backpacks forever, and I thought, wow, this is cool. So.
Well, that was what we realized is when you're backpacking in the mountains, the frame pack really makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're traveling by train in Europe, you're going down narrow aisles.
Gets in the way,
and,
right?
You have to take the backpack off.
Yeah.
So it needs to be able to handle like a piece of luggage at times.
Right.
And then when you're going some further distance, you need to put it on as a backpack.
Right. And you guys were one of the first retail businesses to call yourself a travel store, right?
Well,
if not the first.
We were
yeah.
That. Yeah. And I've got a little, background on that. We originally called ourselves the Travel Store, and we ended up getting challenged by H. Spencer St. Clair, an attorney representing Travel Store Inc. of Los Angeles, who said our name was substantially identical to that of his client. That's great. It was a travel agency, so there really wasn't, they weren't doing travel goods like we were, but that the idea was, so we changed the name from the Travel Store. It's a takeoff on Le Drug Store in Paris, which is actually it's still there. We just saw it last fall.
Oh, cool.
And it's a kind of it's got lots of little shops, a music section, a cafe out front, but it's a famous institution in Paris. So given that we were, selling mainly international travel, especially to Europe, we decided to use that as a play.
Well, it gives it a little more international flair, too. Le Travel sounds a little more, upscale than the Travel Store, yeah.
And the taglines, we called ourselves a one-stop store for world travelers, and began calling ourselves travel outfitters. I think we were first to use that, travel outfitters. And in fact, the other term that I think we coined was travel gear. So we were picking up on terms that were used in the outdoor industry because we're selling outdoor, suppliers' products.
Right.
And we applied it to travel, where the adventure wasn't going into the mountains, but traveling in cities and experiencing the cultures of those places.
And independent, carrying everything on your back, carrying everything with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and our original location was really very small, so
yeah, I remember it being really tiny.
Not very long out. I think maybe we only had that location 6 months.
Oh.
We moved down the street to a much bigger space so that we could expand the store part. And so we have a history of going back and forth between expanding and refining the agency part and then the store parts. A substantial number of various skills that were required to move that little business of ours forward.
Yeah. So what were some of the challenges and experiences you learned or developed or made up on the fly?
It's kind of funny. One of our strengths, we've talked about this between ourselves very often, that we have very complementary skills. I'm really organized, and so I'd organize the seminars and I would organize the business. And Bill is incredibly knowledgeable, a tremendous student. He knows travel inside out. He's engaging and entertaining. So that was one of our great strengths, that we had complementary skills. People sometimes ask how we could work together for 36 years and maintain marriage.
Critical. Yeah, that's critical.
But the fact is, it was also one of the challenges. We did have plenty of conflicts. We had different ideas about what was the right route to go on this issue or that issue. And so that was a challenge. We figured it out, but it wasn't always.
How'd you overcome some of those? You just battle it out?
I think the biggest thing we did was we really decided what parts of the business I was in charge of and what parts of the business Bill was in charge of. And he had the final word in his area, and I had the final word in mine. Now, some of the overall decisions, like, opening a second location, going into the mail order business, going online, those we kind of had to just battle out. Someone had to give up. And I think because we value the marriage over the business, one of us would eventually give up, and it wasn't always the same person.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big challenges. Another is that there was no model for what we were doing. There were luggage stores, but luggage stores at that time were among the most boring businesses on earth. They had
no comment.
Luggage in the back. I know. Luggage in the back and gift items in the front.
Yeah.
We used to make the joke that you could buy a toilet seat with barbed wire in what was it, Billy? It was embedded in plastic or something. Just crazy stuff. It had nothing to do with the excitement of travel.
All the chessboards and I guess it's crazy. Yeah.
Right. So, we had to go to a lot of shows. We went to the bookseller show, the luggage show, the gift show, a very early version of the outdoor retailer show. And among all of them, no one seemed to be targeting or seemed to understand our customer. It was either the upscale market, but what we had was the youth and budget market.
Right.
Outdoor was outdoor enthusiasts. We had urban travelers. Even later, when outdoor seemed to connect with adventure travelers, it was a different sort of thing than what we were doing.
It still
adventure
is.
Travel,
it still is. I talked to Shannon Stoll a lot about that, the Adventure Travel Trade Association, and there's still, it's tough to figure out how to horseshoe those guys in with the outdoor businesses. It's interesting.
Well, and the concept we always ran into at OR when we talked about travel was adventure travel, which was groups of people doing things like hiking somewhere or hang gliding somewhere or doing some adventure activity as a group.
Yeah.
Whereas the experience we were talking about was independent solo travelers going and immersing themselves in a culture, going to cities, kind of
or off the beaten path, like going to Thailand and meet with the folks in the backcountry there. Yeah.
Right. That's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was a challenge that no one seemed to really get who our customer was. And at first we tried everything. We brought in American Tourister and Delsey luggage and had that paired with Caribou and Wilderness Experience and Mark Packworks.
Yep. Remember those guys.
But then we had Tom and Norma Link come in with the Ultimate Travel Pack, which was really, that's the first thing that really seemed to nail who our customer was. Steve Barker came in with a pack it had interior aluminum stays, and it had O-rings so you could take off the back straps and put them inside the pack if you wanted to check it.
Yeah.
And this is something Nona had designed, and they thought it would be good for travel because you could take the back straps off.
Yeah, that was one of my first backpacks, was a Sacred 2 from Eagle Creek. After I bought my luggage, I went up to Cedros a few years later when I got into college and backpacking and thought, well, I'm going to buy that because it's multifunctional, and it worked out great. Yeah. Funny.
And over time, Eagle Creek finally did emerge as the brand that absolutely understood it, absolutely nailed our customer.
Yeah, they did a great job. Yeah. So
I was reflecting, Rick, a little bit about the just the sequence of events in our business, and what I remember early on is some retail guru that I was listening to said the average lifespan of a retail concept is 7 years.
Oh, interesting.
That was an intriguing idea.
Yeah.
And it kind of applied, it really applied to us because with the sort of surfing metaphor, we started our business with exclusively European travel or charter flights. Over time, well, that was 1976 when we started. In 1980, we became a fully appointed travel agency, where the airlines give you their, well, back in those days, you had these little metal plates, and you would, like a credit card, you would run a ticket stock over the metal plate on, TWA or United Airlines, somebody like that. And so we were able to sell all airlines. That was significant in that, as the airline deregulation progressed, TWA was the airline that came into San Diego with an L-1011 flight that went San Diego to St. Louis to JFK. It was a one-stop flight to Kennedy Airport in New York.
Wow.
And once you got to New York, you were now connected to their whole system internationally.
Yeah.
So living off in our little southwest corner of the United States, that was a big deal.
That's huge,
and so we became one of the top 100 travel agencies for TWA in the Western United States because we were very specialized. We were known to be that place where if you're going to take a big trip, especially going to Europe, you got to go to a travel store. We were the ones.
You guys were it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were the days. Those were the sweet days in travel because we got a lot of free flights and we did first class traveling and stuff like that. Those days are gone.
Got to see the world. Yeah, that's changed a lot. Yeah.
Continuing that, that one of the next waves that we got in 1982, we began a mail order business, which was actually based on the book Let's Go Europe. Do you remember that?
I remember that book. Yeah.
Harvard Student Agencies they put out this book, Let's Go Europe. They also had regional guides, Let's Go Spain and Portugal, Let's Go Great Britain, Let's Go France. And I can't remember, I think they had about 10 different titles. But that was their go-to guide for many years for travelers on a budget going to Europe.
Right.
And we broke out the big bucks and bought the inside front cover.
Oh, wow.
I was just looking at a copy of my 1982 book, and we have a travel pack for sale on the inside front cover of Let's Go Europe.
How much did we charge for it, Bill?
Yeah.
How much was it?
I did $80 or something like that. I don't have
exactly.
that page open right now.
Yeah.
But we did that for 10 years and went into, we began printing a mail order catalog. And the first few years it was heavy on adult and wilderness experience, but that's really was right at the time when Eagle Creek shifted gears and really began focusing on the travel industry. And I think that's right when Ricky really kicked in at Eagle Creek.
Yeah.
That became the focus. Yeah. And so we kind of built our catalog in the later years around Eagle Creek products. And one of the next things I remember back in 1984, I remember being at the outdoor retailer show, Joan, or it was at the Disneyland Hotel. I'm sitting around.
Well, the first outdoor retailer show was in Anaheim. That was probably it.
It wasn't Anaheim.
So that was probably was then.
Yeah.
So we were sitting around talking to Steve Barker, Eagle Creek, and he was lamenting the problem they were having with travel gear, which is, he said that there's a market for their product, but there's no marketplace.
Yep.
Meaning, they were focusing on travel and they were trying to distribute it through mountain shops who really understood outdoor, but didn't really quite have, they didn't have their mind around, we're really focused on this international traveler that we were going after.
Yeah.
So that was quite a recognition for us. And he, at some point, suggested that we should try our business model, which is with the beach area now, standalone street level business in a shopping mall, where you can develop the business model, then you could replicate it in other locations. And in fact, we took a trip to Europe that fall, and when we got back, we'd been approached by the Han Company, a local San Diego shopping center developer that was developing Horton Plaza, the shopping center in downtown San Diego, which was kind of the cornerstone of downtown redevelopment. Downtown had kind of really fallen on hard times as people had moved to the suburbs and regional shopping malls had been developed. So like so many downtowns.
That was a major deal. I remember when that happened. Yeah.
Was a problem. Yeah. But the big effort to bring it back was the development of this shopping center in the center. And so we had a leasing agent come, and in fact, what we learned later is they were trying to get a lot of locally owned businesses to come into the shopping center. Center. So we decided to take a chance. We looked at that and thought to ourselves, our customers are people going to Paris, Rome, Madrid, Tokyo, and, they like big cities. So, the city experience if it works in downtown San Diego would, I think our average customer would find that appealing. So we tossed in our lot, went in Court Plaza in 1984, and
talk about challenges.
Yeah, I remember I was working at A16 at the time when A16 did the Wild Horizons store there too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Did you work at Wild Horizons?
I didn't work at Wild Horizons, but I was at A16 when that was going on. Yeah,
okay.
I was.
And you remember it was a challenge.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we became friends with Mick Mead.
Oh, got you.
Trying to figure out how to deal with the challenges of Court Plaza.
Right, that was unique.
In fact, I remember the day we met him. It was it must have been July of 1984. We walked over to where their business was. They were doing the tenant improvements there, and they just had a load of logs delivered, like Wyoming logs or something like that.
Yeah.
And Mick and Joan B. Mead were in there pounding in these logs to become the floor of Wild Horizons.
Wow. Yeah. It turned out to be a beautiful store. There was a lot of great shops in
was.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
and I know they were trying to do a business model that would work.
Exactly. That was they were trying to spin their model as well. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But then just to finish up here, for us, what we were at Horton Plaza for 8.5 years, coming near the end of our lease in 1994. And Joan kind of reflected on that. We'd given the landlord about $1 million in rent and common area charges by that time. And a building.
It was another one of my little insights.
Great.
That,
good insight.
You're going to be paying someone's mortgage.
That's right.
We were paying the mortgage on that property,
why not pay
Fort
our
Plaza.
own? Yep.
And so we should pay our own.
Yeah, good for you. That's when you moved
so
across the street. Yeah.
Yeah, we got an SBA loan and bought a building over on 4th Avenue in the Gaslamp corridor, which you obviously know what that is. People who know San Diego, people who don't know San Diego, it's really has become an incredible dining and entertainment district.
The Hampton spot.
A lot of nightclubs.
Yeah.
Got the convention center down at the bottom end of 5th Avenue.
Right.
The Padres ballpark is just on the east side of that. A lot of residential development around. But we moved over to the Gaslamp corridor and ran our business out of the building 745 4th Avenue for 19 years. And in fact, that was the retirement plan, as it turned out. Buying the building was a smart move.
Yeah, it worked out
good. Our store
good.
was downstairs. We had 5,000 square feet of space downstairs, and we rented offices upstairs to
you guys did a great job. Yeah. Worked
and
out well.
we actually we rented space to a travel agency which was Council Travel.
I remember that.
Rented from us.
Yeah.
And then it was STA, Student Travel Australia, rented space. So we had travel services in there, and we grew the business selling obviously a lot of Eagle Creek products.
A lot of books. You guys had a great book collection. Yeah.
Right. Books and maps.
Well, somewhere around that time, Steve Benzak and we connected up. He was at Ex Officio. I just talked to him the other day, as a matter of fact. And that's when we were still struggling at Eagle Creek with that whole marketplace, right? How were we going to do that? And Ex Officio and Eagle Creek teamed up, and Steve and I and the sales reps, we'd go around to our joint retailers and, convince them to create an adventure travel or a travel department. And that's when it really, that whole department, those guys really got into the travel luggage thing and kind of blew the category up. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
And you guys carried both those brands.
Yeah, that's right. We ended up doing well with Ex Officio and Jeff Sheets.
That's right. Yeah.
Saw him all the time. Yeah, I think Joan did a great job on the clothing buying. That was, in fact, one of the other things we did was we were early adopter online. We went online selling in 1997. Ahead of we were really out there ahead of even REI and some much bigger, more serious, larger businesses than ourselves. Well, we were shooting our own photos. We were going up to Melville Park, and I was taking slides and scanning slides and removing backgrounds.
Wow.
In fact, we had the whole Eagle Creek product line online before anybody.
Yeah.
And we actually benefited from that because for a while there, Eagle Creek, when they were getting customer service phone calls, and people people were wanting to buy stuff, they would refer them to us.
Send them right to you.
So we had a nice little sweet spot in like 1999, 2000. We were actually doing about 60% of our business online at that time.
Oh, wow, impressive.
We were focused on, that in that era, if you're looking for a money belt or a backpack, you would go to Google and type that in. And so we used to come up really high on the list. In fact, one of the ones I remember particularly is we were constantly number 3 on a search on luggage tags. You wouldn't expect a luggage tag sale to be much of not a lot of.
Yeah, you sell a bunch of them.
That's it. What we discovered is a lot of people use them like for wedding.
Oh,
for
interesting.
Weddings. And so people would buy 300 of them.
Wow.
One of our big sales was what year was that? I don't know, but John Bon Jovi's tour, his U.S. tour. They bought Switchback, Eagle Creek Switchback,
cool.
a sale that we arranged for, I can't remember, it must have been
that was in the late 90s, yeah.
100 roadies, and had them monogrammed with the tour dates on them.
Yeah, you guys were on the front of a lot of breaking waves.
Yeah, that was. I mean, if anything, I think if talking to sort of younger people that were thinking about getting into the business, or we were of our time, and we caught the waves that were available to us. Those waves are not available to somebody today.
Yeah,
in the world.
So
there are other ways out there that you can catch.
Right. So, what do you think today, as you look for outside looking in? What do you think some of the key success factors are to being a travel merchant these days?
Well, it's what Bill was talking about is be looking out in front, try to figure out what the waves are that are going to pick you up and carry you forward. And obviously, we don't know now. We need someone else has to figure it out.
Right.
But I think the most important things are to really know who your customer was. We knew our customer inside out.
Yeah.
We knew what they needed to take with them when they traveled. We knew what they needed to know and did seminars to teach them. And so, obviously now is a more difficult time with Amazon and brands selling directly online. It's challenging. I guess one of my bits of advice, if I were still in it, you have to be a brand. I think a retailer in today's world to do well really has to have their own branded merchandise that's available from them. Otherwise, people end up going to the brand themselves or obviously Amazon.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Yeah, I've heard that from other people. Yeah, be your own brand. And how about talk a little bit about how the outdoor and travel industries intersect or don't? I mean, we did our best to try to create these travel oasis. I forget what Steve remembered what we called it. I forget now, but these travel departments, and we did a pretty good job. We had Eagle Creek and Ex Officio definitely for sure, and a few other brands kind of scattered around. But do you think it's easier these days or tougher these days to create travel, sell travel?
I think it's much tougher because when we were starting, when we were coming up, people didn't know where to find voltage converters. They didn't know what voltage converter they needed. They didn't know what plug adapters were. They didn't know where you could get a money belt. And we answered those problems and those questions for them. But now those things are omnipresent. You
everywhere,
can get money belts at the drugstore. You can get voltage converters at Best Buy.
Yeah, 7-Eleven.
So setting yourself apart in the travel category, I think, is much more difficult.
Yeah, I feel lucky. We closed up the business in 2013. We can talk about that a little later. But, one of the main things that happened to us was in 2011 at Christmas time, we started having customers coming in with their smartphones and snapping pictures of the barcodes on our product. Eagle Creek backpack. They'd walk over and snap a picture of that. And Amazon was promoting this showroom where they were telling their customers to go in, take a picture of the barcode. It'll pop up on your phone. That product will pop up on your phone available from Amazon, probably at a bit cheaper price.
Right.
And they're going to give you a $5 credit on top of that.
Right.
So, you'd have customers coming in looking at products. We'd have staff there showing, demonstrating.
Doing all the service.
And then people would say, can you match this price? Or, do you have this color? And so, what happened was where we were, really successful online back when we went to Google in 2000. By 2011, 12, people were going straight to Amazon.
Yeah.
And buying straight from them. And then the big thing that, we kind of went around the outdoor industry show in 2012, I think it was, and we were talking to Roger from industry, and various other folks, because I don't think the industry saw that coming.
Right.
That there's a whole wave of challenging retailers was
I think there's a ton of stuff that Amazon did that nobody saw coming. That's that's one of the strengths of Amazon.
Disruptor.
Exactly.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, they're still doing it. Yeah, it's
But
different.
they made it for a retailer. They made it real hard. And, I'm sad to say, in fact, we just were looking this morning. Distant Lands, one of the great travel stores, is in Pasadena.
Yeah,
has recently closed up. And your friend Cindy,
really? Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah,
those guys are
they're
great.
gone now.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
And Cindy, are you in touch with Cindy?
Yeah, she's closing up, retiring. Yep. They've been at it a long time. Yeah, it's changing. The world is changing. Let's shift gears a little bit.
It is.
What do you have a favorite place to travel? Either of you?
Oh boy, one of my rules of thumb when we used to talk to customers, we had one of our customers was fantastic. They were always going off on this big trip, so we lift off their energy. And one of my rules of thumb was always go where you know somebody. So sometimes it's less about the place itself; it's more about who do you know there.
Uh-huh.
And for example, I have an old high school friend that lives in Chiang Mai, Thailand, in northern Thailand, and teaches at the Buddhist University in Chiang Mai. A couple of his students were Zen monks from Vietnam.
Oh.
So we caught up with Steve in Dalat, Vietnam, about a year and a half ago, and traveled around Vietnam, sitting around with abbots of Zen monasteries in
Very
the country.
cool.
So it's, sometimes it's more than just the place. I mean, that was a fantastic trip. So
Yeah, that's good advice.
The trip was sort of defined by who you know.
Uh-huh.
For me, my sister moved to Spain over 40 years ago and raised her family there. She lives in Madrid. So, I go to Spain often and just love the country.
I've only been there once, so I got to get back. Yeah, great place.
Boy, it just keeps on giving. I can't get enough of that place.
Yeah.
Joan,
do you have a spot?
Well, if I look back at the various places we have traveled, I'd say one of my all-time favorites was Tierra del Fuego, Argentina, the very bottom of Argentina. I mean, it was just the people that we encountered, the huge estancias that we stayed on, the history of the place. That was one of my all-time favorites.
It's so wild down there. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Great spot.
And really, any place I haven't been before, I love going somewhere brand new and being, just seeing what it really is like. I mean, I think sometimes about going to Thailand and having seen pictures of, the Buddha cave with all the beautiful Buddhas, and it looked so great in National Geographic. And then when I walked in, I thought, this looks a little kitschy, I just love knowing what it actually is like.
Yeah.
I like that. I love that experience.
Yeah, that's a good
We
one.
should say that probably one of the most overwhelming trips was a hike down South Pass Trail into the Grand Canyons with some friends that are old canyon reps. And oh my God. That was a great trip.
Yeah, that's a beautiful spot too. Yeah. Are there any places, locations, or trips that were more challenging to visit than some of the others?
Gosh.
Either physically or off the beaten path.
I'll
I'll
tell you, because we're not the kind of outdoor folks that the rest of you are. The Grand Canyon was a challenge for us.
Yeah,
especially the first time. We went down several times, but the first time I remember telling our friends that had been hiked it many times that I'm very persistent. I'll just keep going on stuff. But I don't volunteer to put my life in danger. Unlike some of my friends in the outdoor industry, I look at Paul EA and others. But anyway, I can remember coming around the corner and the trail was maybe a foot wide, and I looked down, and boy, that would have been the end of my life. And I
Yeah.
said, Derek, what did you think I was talking about
Yeah, right.
when I said that? In the end, we got to the bottom, and it was life changing. We really did love that.
Very cool.
One of the things that when we travel, we love it when it gets challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a trip we took between Quintana Roo in southern, where is that, Bill?
Yucatan Peninsula.
Yucatan Peninsula, the southern part of the, and we're on our way to Bailey City.
Mm-hmm.
And there was supposed to be a bus, and the bus didn't come, and we started asking questions.
Well, it doesn't become an adventure until something goes wrong. So
there was one bus, and it was broken down.
Oh,
and
man.
so we decided to hitchhike, and every single vehicle stopped.
Wow.
And every one of them was just going down the road about a mile.
Oh, my God.
No one was going anywhere near Bailey City. So this went on and on and on. And those kinds of things, when they happen, I just love them. I love it when it goes wrong and you've got to figure it out.
Yeah, that makes it adventure. Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
And sometimes you look at how you handle it is telling.
Yeah.
One of the themes in our travels, we love riding public transportation in places that have good train systems. And in fact, places challenging to travel. A lot of people go, but they travel independently in China if you don't speak the language, or I speak a little bit of Chinese. I really get a kick out of it. I love Chinese history. I love the China History podcast by I can't remember.
We can look that up. I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's some really great podcasts out there. I read a lot of books, about China. I'm just fascinated by Chinese history, and I think as an independent traveler, the way you kind of bum around Europe, China is kind of a challenging place to travel like that, but it's really rewarding. You just have some great encounters with people. And, we always think of China in terms of competition and conflict and human rights and things like that. I think
they're humans like the rest of us.
We think of the downside of China, but when you go there, it just blows your mind.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And Japan, I found the same way. And I think the interesting thing about travel is a lot of these other places, it's all, you can sort of make out the signage and where you're headed. Those two countries, it's like artwork. Forget it. You're not going to figure it out. And that makes it challenging.
I know I sat in two Eagle Creeks. You guys used to do 5-year planning sessions, and I was invited to join those 2 times, which was a great experience for me. But I remember an awful lot of talk about, adventure travel, and the kind of travel we always talked about was referred to as soft travel. I think the outdoor folks don't sometimes appreciate that. A lot of folks who travel, are really challenging themselves in a more of a cultural sphere,
different way, right?
And pushing themselves in that on that side, and it is adventurous.
Yeah. The outdoor industry has leaned a lot towards the physical extremes as opposed to the cultural, mental extremes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's changing, but yeah. What was the best decision you've ever made? Business-wise, personally?
Well, business-wise, it was buying that building. We bought it in 1994. And it, in the nearly 20 years we owned it, went way up in value, and we ended up retiring. We're sitting in a house 2 blocks north of San Diego Zoo in Hillcrest in San Diego. Nice place, great neighborhood. We landed in an incredibly good spot. And so it was, that was, as a business decision, was in a way was not just continuing in retail, but getting into real estate and having a real real estate asset was huge for us.
And getting out of it at the right time.
Yeah, that's right. Right. I think our best decision was each other, Bill.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yep. So who inspires you, maybe currently or over your career? Who are some of your inspirational go-tos?
Oh, boy. A lot of people come to mind. But, I especially love people who kind of take risks, have got sort of a creative entrepreneurial attitude, and there's a whole bunch of folks like that in the outdoor business.
Yeah.
And, the people that were so important to us. We were lucky to be in, near Steve and Nona Barker, Ricky Schlesinger, and the rest of you guys who were part of that Eagle Creek
That was
crew.
a fun crowd. Yeah.
And so I love that. Actually, in the case of our business, I got getting involved in community affairs in downtown San Diego, so I got to hang out with architects and city planners and learn their language and watch the whole city develop. That was pretty exciting. But I think in the industry, it's just folks like 816. Come on, look what Nick, John D, the people that have come out of that business. You've got to admire that.
Yeah, good guys.
I guess for me, a lot of the people I served on the Outdoor Industry Board for, maybe 7 or 8 years. And there's just so many impressive people in the industry. We used to love to go to the show because, the people were healthy and energetic and upbeat. And it's just a great bunch of people to hang with.
Yeah, fun group.
I loved going to Washington, D.C. with members of the board. I went to meetings with Sally Jewell.
Oh, yeah.
To do our lobbying efforts. I mean, just so many impressive people.
Right. Oh, that's
in the
good.
industry.
Yeah. What's on your travel list in the next couple of years or this year? You got anything major coming up?
Bill's got a trip.
Yeah?
Yeah, actually, I'm doing a little sibling thing. Our family history on my mother's side, is Irish from Cork County and Cornish miners. They had a great grandfather, Charlie Smith, of Cornish heritage down in southwestern England. So my brother and sister and I are going to rendezvous and see some of that territory.
That sounds fun.
Long run, well, the country I'd love to go to. I'd love to go to Iran. I haven't been there yet.
Yeah.
But I'm actually at the point where I kind of like going back to the places I've been before that I'm familiar with. I don't necessarily need to break new ground on every trip.
Yeah, see how they've changed over the years. And yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the travel biz? Either starting a business or just getting in?
Go back to that thing that I said to begin with, to really know your customer. Mm-hmm. Because you can't be everything to everyone. You've got to choose exactly what your niche is, really know what that customer needs, and then be a brand.
Yeah, that's great advice.
I think that's the answer.
I can't remember where I've heard that before. I can't remember exactly where now, but yes, that's one of the latest conversations around retail is you have to be a brand because brands are ubiquitous these days, and you can't rely on them like you could 20 years ago to to be exclusive. It's not happening. So you got to build your own brand. Yeah.
Yeah. You try on a pair of shoes at REI and you want to go see how many colors you can get it in. So you go directly to the brand on their website.
Yeah.
And they're selling to you. I mean,
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's different.
So be a brand. That's my biggest advice.
All right. That's good. Bill, you got anything?
Boy, I tell you, it's hard now, I think, and I think it's especially, competing with the vendors on their own websites would just be very difficult as a retailer. I mean, there are a lot of people traveling. It's like, you want to catch a wave. Chinese people are coming
right,
here
exactly.
now.
There's a big, a lot of that conversation about here in the Inyo County. They're coming here, so they're doing a lot of in-services to teach people how to handle that. Yeah.
Learn Chinese would be my advice.
That's good, right? Yeah. Do you guys have any daily routines you use to keep your sanity? You meditate?
Oh,
I'm sure you exercise.
In fact, we do have a very specific meditation practice. But I get up, make Joan coffee. We, as I said, live just north of Balboa Park, so we walk the Rocket Dog in Balboa Park.
Cool.
Indoor out in East County. Nick, what people who don't know San Diego should know is the backcountry here is fantastic. It's really easily accessible, so you can, in a very short period of time, you can get out of town and be hiking in the hills. It's incredibly diverse with the coastal plain, the mountains, the deserts. There's great experiences to be had here.
Yeah, exactly.
And probably your listeners may not know that in his early 20s, Bill was an ordained Buddhist monk.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And lived in. He mentioned that he lived in Thailand, and so he had continued that practice his meditation practice throughout his life.
Oh, okay.
And, it's probably, I don't know, 5 years ago or so that I finally got on board with it. I went to a silent retreat and have started the practice myself. And so we do sit each morning, almost every morning, not every morning, but almost. And that, it all keeps us pretty centered.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And I'm sure you have a couple favorite books or books you give as gifts, travel related.
Boy, I'm a huge John Steinbeck fan. I've read pretty much everything. Actually, we have a guys' book club that I'm a part of, and we read pretty much only nonfiction. Just finished the book about the Midnight series about the partition of India in 1947. Ooh, boy.
Oh, wow,
that's
cool.
rough stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I give gifts. In fact, more than books these days, I think the podcast. I mean, what you're doing is, first of all, let me give you a huge compliment. Rick. You're really doing a great job here.
Thanks.
And I love that you're creating a record of this industry. And you've got some wonderful interviews to work with.
Thank you. Well, people have been very generous. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a pretty cool time in the industry, and folks like you have been super generous. So it's been fun. Thank you.
Well, it's kind of a golden era of podcasts. Joan and I listen to a lot of them together. In fact, you've got a favorite one.
Oh, which one's that?
What's my favorite podcast?
Yeah.
You ever listen to BBC
In Our Time?
In Our Time.
Okay.
With Melvin Bragg, he does the most amazing. He has 3 guests every week. It's basically a BBC radio show, but we'll talk about everything from the Spanish Armada to the Irish Famine to East India Company to the Taiping Rebellion to the Gold Rush in California.
Oh, we'll link to that in the show notes. That's cool.
Great show. We love that.
Awesome.
Joan, you had a couple of books, I think you.
Well, the one book that people aren't generally aware of that I think is just incredible, and it goes back to that Tierra del Fuego trip. It's called Uttermost Part of the Earth. And it's nonfiction. I'm normally a fiction reader. I normally like to read fiction that's set in the place I'm going. I find that's a cool way to kind of connect. But this one's nonfiction, but it reads like fiction because it's so enthralling. Oh, cool. And it's about the family that originally settled from that came from England as missionaries to Tierra del Fuego.
Wow.
And it shows the Aboriginals there as such interesting, funny people, not the kind of look that you often get. And it's a fascinating, wonderful book.
We'll link
it's
to
out
that.
of print. You have to get it from one of the resale type places. It's great.
Cool. We'll link to that too. Yeah. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to ask of our listeners or say to our listeners?
Yeah. I think
look for that wave to go catch it.
There you go. That's good. Yeah, I like it. Good advice. Yeah.
Also listen to all these other shows that you've done, Rick. I was just recently listening to the Ricky Schlesinger and the Tim McGuire podcast, old buddies of ours.
Yeah.
What I love is that I've known those guys for years, and I know outlines of their story, but these tell you in much more fine-grained detail about their lives. So I learned a lot about people I thought I knew well.
Same as I'm doing them. It's pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's anybody trying to develop a career in this industry. You have to operate in this time, but it shows you how you need to be flexible and find the opportunities that come up.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's kind of my mantra. You have to learn from those that came before you, so you know how to handle what's coming at you. So that's awesome.
Good line.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It's been great catching up with you guys. We'll touch base again in a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'll be down there, so we'll have to grab a drink or something.
Yeah, definitely. You come over here for dinner. Really?
Oh, all right. Cool. Sounds good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. We'll wander around Balboa Park. Come on down.
Let's book it. I'll follow up with an email, let you know when I'm going to be down there for sure for our family reunion. We'll set it up.
Super.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. It's been great.
Thanks.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Until Until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.